Hello and welcome to Old Faithful with your host, me, Matthew Trask. Thanks for watching. Thanks to Perfect Wave Productions down here at 1215 East St. Patrick Street. Steve and Jay making me and my guests look good on camera. Live sound system sales support and installation. Try saying that 5 times fast, Bob. Please support my friends at Black Hills Blend Espresso. 4 convenient locations here in Rapid City. They may not make you happy, but they will make you caffeinated.
And awake.
And awake. Yes, they will keep you awake. You are among the many people that I wanted on the show before there was a show. Thank you for staying here in Rapid City an extra day to be on my show.
Well, I appreciate it.
Bob, I'm just going to say Bob Fahey, because that's your name.
Yes.
Okay.
I've been called a lot of things, but that is my... in court, that's what they call me.
And I have to say, a couple of weeks ago, we had Patrick Fahey on the show. I felt so dumb when I realized that you two were related. In fact, your father and son.
Yeah, well, if you stood us next to each other, you wouldn't think that by looking at us. I think Patrick is 6'4", and...
he is a tall guy.
He's a tall guy.
Right, but there is a resemblance. After it was pointed out to me, I could see it.
Yeah. A lot of people say that to me.
Sure. So this show isn't about fathers and sons, although we could talk about that. But it's called Old Faithful, in case you forgot, and it's about instruments. And it's always going to be a little guitar heavy. And by God, have we got a guitar right here. So Bob, why don't you just go ahead and tell us about you, with emphasis on your musical journey?
Well, I grew up in the Black Hills. I was born in Sturgis. And I was explaining to my 10-year-old granddaughter the other day that hundreds of thousands of motorcycle people come to Sturgis every year to celebrate the fact that I was born there.
Oh!
And she's like, really? And my daughter's like, Dad, knock it off. But I don't know. I probably started playing guitar when I was 10 or so. Our oldest sister was in college, and she brought home this old Harmony guitar with F-holes and a warped neck. And my older brother, Michael, and I, who's also a musician, would take turns playing that guitar until we couldn't play it anymore, because it didn't take long before it
Sure.
you were bleeding, or you had blisters or whatever.
Right.
And pretty much played by ear. That was up in Vail, South Dakota, actually. Was where our first guitar came along, and north of here. And so that's kind of where I started. I saw, of course, Elvis on the Ed Sullivan Show. And,
right.
And then the Beatles came along, and that was it. That's all I ever really wanted to do. I've done a lot of different things career-wise, and like I tell people, I had to get a real job so I could afford to buy strings.
Right.
I have a friend who always says there's tens of dollars to be made in music in the Black Hills.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
you know how you make a small fortune in the music business here in Rapid City?
How so?
Start with a large one.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Right. Yeah,
exactly. So I just kept fiddling and went from rock and roll was always my main thing, and then somebody turned me on to some blues somewhere along the line, and that I really got hooked into that and that style, especially players. John Lee Hooker was one of the first people that really got my attention in relation to blues, and then of course Johnny Winter. Got really interested in slide guitar for a number of years and studied that as hard as I could. But interestingly enough, the first slide guitarist I heard that got my attention was Leo Kottke.
Okay, all right.
So then I heard Duane Allman, and it was like, my God, how do you do that? And it took a lot of years to study and work with that. Had the great pleasure to open up for the Allman Brothers one time.
You did?
With our band, The Suspects, and it was up at the Buffalo Chip, and so I got to sit backstage and visit with Warren Haynes and Derek Trucks. Derek Trucks, I think, was only 17 at the time.
Oh my God.
And I got introduced to him, and I said, you're a phenomenal guitar player. And he's just the 17-year-old kid. He goes, you like it? I was like, well, you're okay, kid. Stick with it. But you know, he was pretty humble, and
Sure.
and Warren Haynes was the same way.
Right.
You know, Greg Allman, they just hustled into the green room, and you didn't see him until showtime.
Okay.
You didn't see him after. They just hustled into the bus. But it was a thrill to talk to two slide guitarists that I have studied, particularly Warren Haynes,
Right.
for a number of years. At that time, Derek Trucks was becoming well known.
Right.
So.
Did he have the magic at 17?
Oh, absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, everybody knew.
Sure.
Which was why he was in the band.
Right.
You know,
Mr. Trucks and Mr. Haynes, if you are watching this, you are very welcome on my show. I should just point that out.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was phenomenal. Just
Sure.
like anything you hear now of his, it was just like that.
Sure. And to play like Dwayne Allman, as I understand it, you start by falling off a horse and breaking your arm.
No, apparently. So,
That's how you start.
Yeah, that's what took me so long. I didn't have a horse.
Well, maybe we'll get you a horse and you can fall off.
You have access to those.
I do have I could find you a horse. Yeah. We'll put it kind of in a low spot so you
Yeah.
can fall off real hard. So, two slight diversions. Number one, were you in fact born during the Sturgis motorcycle rally?
I was not born during the rally,
Okay.
but I was born in Sturgis, and I
Okay.
grew up there.
All
And,
right.
and when we were kids, the rally was nothing but races. So
Sure.
there was nothing shut down downtown. It was all the bikers came and camped around that half-mile dirt track up
Right.
there by the baseball fields. And they would race, you know, they tested
Right.
their bikes out in the new racing machines and stuff. And there was a hole under the fence that we'd sneak in every year to go watch them, you know, the group of little kids. But nothing happened in downtown whatsoever.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. And secondly, the old Harmony, would it have been a Sovereign? Do you remember?
I think it was, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I think it was.
Quite nostalgic collector item today. You probably have no clue where it is.
Oh no, that thing's long gone, and it was in horrible shape.
Right.
I'm not even sure if it had a truss rod in it. That probably could have been, you know, straightened the neck out, but
Right.
perhaps. But you know, J.J. Cale's favorite guitar for years was a Harmony, and he had so many electronics put into it. Actually, at one point they just left the back off of it. And
Really?
yeah, and
Wow.
so I felt kind of proud that I started out on a
Right.
Harmony after that, because the moment I heard J.J. Cale, I was totally sold on his style, his subtle, laid-back style.
I know of several people who make a living restoring old Harmony guitars.
Okay.
Most of them are poorly made out of very good materials. So they had all the stuff, they just put it together in a hurry.
Sure.
And so it's rosewood and spruce tops and everything you want.
Yeah.
They just slapped it together.
And they didn't have any idea what a tone wood actually was, I don't think. At that
They
time.
might not
I mean,
have.
At least, I'm guessing, you know,
Right.
at least what they were doing was more of a production type of thing, like
yeah.
the silver tones
Right.
and things like that
Yeah.
were. And even the Dan Electros, for that
Yes.
matter, they were just like, make them and put them out.
To have stuff at Sears to sell to kids who had just
Exactly.
seen the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan show.
Exactly,
That's
yeah.
what it was for.
Yeah.
So, let's see. We're having so much fun. I lost my place here. So, tell us about the bands you were in. You mentioned one.
Well, the Suspects. I'll back up a little bit. My older brother and I started bands when we were in junior high school and
Sure.
high school, and jamming in the basements and stuff like that. And some players that came out of that used to come and jam with us all the time. Chuck Thomas was one of them. I don't know if you ever knew Chuck or not. He's a bass player.
No.
And he plays upright quite a bit.
Okay.
He moved recently down to Fort Collins.
Oh.
Worked in bands early with Greg McDonald.
Okay.
In fact, Greg McDonald and I were basically the founding members of the group The Suspects.
Okay.
My older brother and I went on tour for many years with a band called the Badlands Blues Band. My wife was a singer in there, my first wife, and Greg McDonald was one of our guitar players. We toured around the West Coast and things like that. Kind of got tired of that. It got to be work because, everywhere you went, your song list had to look like a Billboard chart.
Sure.
And if you did any ad-libbing on anything, club managers and owners were likely to go, that's not how that song goes.
Right.
It's like, it sort of became a job.
Sure.
And so we, long story short, we came back to the Black Hills, and like I always have actually, and my brother and I just kind of started a blues duo.
Okay.
And it was really interesting because the more I started doing just what I wanted to do and what felt good to me, the more response and the more work I actually did. So, kind of fast forward ahead through a few groups and things like that. There was a group called The Sharks that Chuck Thomas was in. Mike Ty was our drummer and one of our vocalists, phenomenal vocalist and drummer. Greg McDonald was our lead guitar player. Again, worked with him since we were kids in junior high, basically. And the Suspects came about because I was managing a restaurant up in Deadwood, and at the Eagle Bar, and I think it was Prairie Edge Casino at that time.
Okay.
And they needed a band. The band backed out, and the manager came and said, "Hey, Bob, you got a band? We need a band." And I said, "Sure." And he said, "Well, who's in it?" And I said, "The Usual Suspects," which is how the Suspects name came about. And I got on the phone, started calling guys.
Right.
And it was Greg McDonald, Bernie Winkler on bass,
okay.
John Margolis on drums,
all right.
Will Waller on keys. Will Waller was not the first choice on keys. A keyboard player and sax player by the name of Ricky Jacobson, God bless his soul, was busy, and he said, "Call that Doc guy," which is Will Waller. And we loaded in, never played together before. We did a 4-hour gig. And we all went, well, that was a lot of fun. And that became kind of a 20-year thing, off and on.
And you were Kaiser Soze.
And I was what?
Kaiser Soze.
Yeah.
A reference to the movie The Usual Suspects.
Yeah,
Sorry, I lost it.
Yeah. That's right. It's been a long time since I saw that. So, we played off and on for a lot of years. And,
wow.
It was an interesting group because we did, we would do anything from the raw Delta blues that I specialize into, stuff that John McLaughlin and Pat Metheny write, because that's what Greg really excelled at.
Okay,
John
sure.
Margolis was a jazz player,
right?
A drummer from New York before he moved here. And those guys are super talented. I had to work very hard to keep up with those guys. And
so that first night, did your boss say, "Hey, Bob, you got a band in the morning"? And that night you were on the stage, or did you have time to do...
No, it was that morning, and I called everybody, and we all showed up that
So
night.
You got on the stage, hooked everything in, and said 1, 2, 3, oh shit, what's going to happen?
Yeah, basically.
Wow.
Now, Bernie and we'd all, other than Will Waller, had worked together at one time or another before.
All right.
So we all knew the level that everybody was at. And we knew we could jam for 4 hours if we needed to with different things, and we did.
Yeah.
It was fun. It was really a lot of fun.
Cool. And then that became a 20-year...
Basically about, I think the Suspects worked together for 20 some odd years. I left the band a few years ago to do a lot of solo work in Arizona and stuff.
All right.
And they kept doing some things. They put out a really nice live album on PBS radio that they did a show on a year or two ago.
Okay, so they're still going.
Well, no, they're not.
Oh, they're not.
Greg spends his winters in the Philippines with his wife.
Right.
Will Waller is now on his boat in Florida.
Okay.
And Bernie is retired at home. Bernie and John is also at home, but they'll get together every once in a while. We'll get together at a party. We got together and jammed a little bit at a party this summer, and it was kind of fun. And we were going to do a blues show, but that kind of fell apart.
Sure.
We weren't real enthusiastic about it. We were all kind of like, how much time do we have? Rehearsal and that kind of thing. Because for the most part, it was the most polished band I ever played.
Sure. Yeah.
But I mean, we were doing things like Spain and One Night Stand, very difficult songs to play for me in particular.
Right. Yeah.
And we worked hard at it, and everybody
He's being modest, everybody. But that right there, that story, kids, is worth the price of admission. We better get on to talk about this beautiful guitar and how you came to... I was completely geeking out because I'm super excited about this here. Go ahead and tell us about it.
This is a Bedell coffee house dreadnought, and made by Tom Bedell. His company is in Bend, Oregon.
Okay.
And he also owns Breedlove Guitars. But this is their boutique guitars. And this is probably one of their midline guitars, actually.
Wow.
It's an Adirondack spruce top, ebony bridge and fretboard, Honduran mahogany neck, and Indian rosewood back and sides, koa wood binding. This is actually the second one that I've had. This is the first time I ever saw one of these. I looked at it on the hanging on the wall at a music store, and I looked at the price tag, and I was like, I'm not even going to touch that thing, Anyway, through as fate would have it, I wound up with one in my hands, and I did a recording with it at Will Waller's studio, the Sanctuary Studio in the Black Hills here, and we did a video, and I actually sent it to Bedell, and I said, this is what this guitar sounds like, straight into the microphones, and they reached out to me and asked if they could, publish the video, and I said sure, and then they asked me if I would be a Bedell artist, and I said yeah, I'd be happy to be. It's when you get one of these guitars, they do only sustainable wood, and down trees, that kind of thing. It's registered. I have the papers in the case, so that it's legal. So when you travel in or out of the country, in certain places, these instruments can be confiscated if it's illegal wood. It also, as I was showing you earlier, has papers which I'd never seen before. I'm sure a lot of high-end companies do it, that show the exact frequency that the wood is sanded to.
That is amazing.
Yeah, I'm like,
right.
What? Of course, I'm looking at the frequencies. I'm like, okay, all right, well, and I'm just, where do I plug it in? And speaking of that, this particular model of Bedell, a lot of them, but not all of them, uses a K&K Pure Mini pickup, which is underneath the bridge. Mm-hmm. Inside on the soundboard, it's not the saddle, underneath the saddle transducer type.
Sure.
I don't get along with those at all. I think they're tinny sounding.
Right.
A lot of people use them and they're fine with them. I may just not know how to dial them in. But on this particular guitar, and I'm a pretty percussive rhythm player.
Right.
So when you're playing and you're anything like that, it picks up.
Right.
And it picks up on the body anywhere you touch it, and so. With the K&K Pure Minis in particular, so it's really a beautiful setup for an RV. And that's when I first, kind of looked around. I was like, I might have too many guitars.
Sure. Yeah.
I didn't, but I've never had a whole lot in relation.
It has been my experience that the more guitars you have, the less you play.
Well, it could be.
You're too busy taking care of guitars.
Yeah, it could be, and frankly, it's. I just don't need them. I'm doing a solo thing now, and I basically just make sure I have an extra set of strings in case I pop a string. But for the most part, I'm doing laid back, coffee house bistro type stuff. I've done a lot of big stage stuff, but that's a whole different beast.
Right. So, Mr. Fahey is going to play us out here, and he's going to demonstrate, and you wouldn't notice this if I didn't point it out, playing injured.
Yeah, I cut the bejesus out of the palm of my hand a week ago, and it's pretty bad, actually, but I can still use my fingers.
We were talking before the show how it does definitely change your playing. You have to adjust.
Changes.
There are things that you can't do, and you learn on the fly that I can't do that right now.
Yeah.
But he's going to make it look good.
Well, I don't know. You can edit all of that. Right?
Where's that baby confidence we're all looking for? Let me do my little thing here, and then you play. Remember my sponsorship with Trask Hay LLC. Large, round, and square bales More importantly, custom haying services. You may have hay crop you need put up next summer. Call Joe Trask, 605-515-0858. All my listeners have hay they need put up, you know. And Skunk Baxter says, change your string. Ladies and gentlemen, Bob Fahey.
This is an original tune that I wrote. It's on my EP, actually. I found love on a quiet night. I found love by the firelight. I found love that is always right. You know that I found love. I found love in the promised land. Love in places that I don't understand. I found love when you took my hand. You know that I found love. When the power of love fills your heart and soul, the mountains will move and miracles unfold. I found love in a photograph. I found love in a sweet baby's laugh. I found love that will always last. You know that I found love. I found love in a flower's bloom. The sweet fragrance fills an empty room. No longer does it fade away too soon. You know that I found love. When the power of love fills your heart and soul, the mountains will move and miracles unfold. I found love in the promised land. Love in places that I don't understand. I found love when you took my hand. You know that I found love. You know that I found love.
Woo! Man, that thing sounds nice.
It's a nice, it's a nice guitar.
Thanks for being on the show,
Thank
Bob.
you for having me on.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it very much.
You bet.